Welcome to the LivBtr podcast. I'm Erica Spiegelman, addiction and wellness specialist and author, and along with me, I have my co-host, Siano, a New York-based serial entrepreneur, business scaling expert, and wellness aficionado. We are here to inspire, encourage growth, and most importantly, to live better. Welcome to the LivBtr podcast. Today we have on an incredible woman, Jamie Hess. She is a media personality, wellness influencer, successful podcaster, and a happy wife and mom. She's also a businesswoman, and we cannot wait to hear about all of her endeavors. Welcome to the show, Jamie. Welcome to the LivBtr podcast. Hey, everybody. I'm Erica Spiegelman.
And I'm Siano.
Yes, my co-host. And today we have on incredible woman, Jamie Hess. And Jamie has many hats that she wears, which will let her kind of explain how she describes herself. But first, I love how you said that I talk about making your mess your message. I just love that, especially in my line of work where I think I help people reframe all the time that our struggles, like reframing, there's no such thing as, let's say, a failure is just a lesson, or, so I love that. So thank you for doing that. And welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. This is
Thanks
fun.
for joining us.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. You coach people, but you also obviously sounds like you have a lot of different brands, and you do speaking and you do retreats, and there's so much stuff, which I love. And it's hard to actually label a person. So I just love to be able to hear it from you.
Well, I'm happy to label myself, which is because it's fun to go back to the beginning. It's always my little mic drop moment. Yeah. So I started as a sick and suffering, hopeless drug addict. So that is a super fun place to start.
Yes.
But I always say you don't understand the light if you didn't come from the darkness. You don't understand it in the same way. Mm-hmm. And I truly believe that. So I started my life very ensconced in the New York nightlife scene. That was my world. And I was a publicist, and I was actually a publicist in New York City for almost 20 years. I started as a raver and a party girl in the New York club scene. And then PR is a very just a hop, skip, and a jump to the next step of that. It's like champagne and cocaine and models and bottles. And that's what you do. And that's how you get earn your stripes, I never even considered that there might be another way to feel love and validation other than being on the guest list. Like, it never even occurred to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Another interesting part of my story is that my mom is TV journalist Joan London. So she hosted Good Morning America for 20 years.
Yeah.
So I kind of had she was America's sweetheart. She was this perfect mom. And I was kind of well, I'm never going to be that. So I might as well just take a total left turn.
Right.
And I did my own thing.
Yeah.
All of that to say, in my early 20s, it all came crashing down, and I'll save you the whole sick and suffering drug story. But let's just say most people know what it looks like to hit your bottom. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty gnarly. And so as I started to get sober, I started to replace the nightlife scene with boutique fitness. It was just coming around at that time. And all of a sudden, the first time I ever dropped into Barry's boot camp, I was oh my God, this is everything I was looking for on the dance floor, the tribal energy, the communal, rhythm, and everybody endorphin led, movement. I was oh my God, here are my people. Only there's no hangover. This is so cool. And I only had friends from the nightlife world until I dropped into boutique fitness and found this new community.
Yeah.
And it gave birth to this whole other part of my life that mixed with being a part of spiritual recovery communities, which is how I got sober.
Yeah.
So all of that gave me this new North Star of what I call radical wellness. Mm-hmm. So it's not just diet and exercise. It's not just sobriety, but it's all of the things. So when people are well, what do you want to talk about on the podcast today? Wellness or business? I'm yeah, no, it's the same thing. It's all the same thing for me. It's getting up with purpose, with intention, with discipline, with integrity, and being able to put your head on the pillow at night and being I did it. And then we're going to do it again tomorrow.
Yes. Oh my God. You say you took this is the words out of my mind in my own recovery. I'm 15 years sober. And I think it's amazing how you found something that filled you up with meaning and purpose, and with, I think, give you more, your spirit back in many ways. And then also have done this professionally, which is a win-win-win. I know, like for me, I started spinning when I got sober, and for me, I also loved to. I went to raves. I grew up in San Francisco, and then I lived in New York. But I remember feeling like the music in the class with the lights off and spinning, and just feeling like this is what I wanted, but better even now. I'm like present, and I look better. I feel better. I'm stronger. So it's so amazing. I think it's just good to encourage people out there that are starting these paths of recovery or wellness journeys too, to find something like that really, I think, lights you up, but mind, body, spirit all together. It's such a powerful way to change. And especially with routine and consistency too, gives us this experience of like, wow, I'm proud of myself. There's like this positive, like, like momentum forward when we are happy and proud of ourselves too. So
yeah. Well, my sponsor also asked me in the beginning, like, make a list of like things that you like to do. And I was like, I'm sorry, what does that mean? She was like, well, like on the weekends. I was like, well, what do you mean? You're either like still
do
awake and
drugs.
cracked out, or you're hungover. Like, I don't, what do you do on the week? Like, what do you mean? She was like, do you like to go to Central Park? Do you like to go on boats? Do you like to go to the movies? I was like, I never did any of that.
I
Like,
know. Yeah.
I just wasn't doing that when I was in my like younger days. So I had to relearn what it meant to feel joy. Like I did not know without chemicals what it felt like to feel joy. And so what ended up happening, you guys, is that in my 20s, as I was working in corporate and PR, and I was an SVP of a big PR agency, so I represented brands like McDonald's and General Motors and LinkedIn and W Hotels, so big brands. I started seeing this rampant rate of burnout around me. People were dropping like flies, or they were just even worse, showing up every day like zombies, like just not even admitting it, but they were empty inside and miserable. And I was like, there's got to be like more. There's got to be something better. And I had this amazing blueprint for living that was recovery, right? And I feel like I always say I feel so bad for people who aren't alcoholics or addicts. I'm like, oh my God, you don't even know. It's like this whole free blueprint for living that makes your life better.
Yeah.
So it really is the only disease that you come out of on the other side better than when you went in, right? Because like
absolutely,
you get so much. So I started imparting that to my colleagues and my laterally positioned like business professionals. And I just was so passionate about sharing my love for fitness and wellness and spiritual recovery. And when I ended up meeting my now husband, we shared that journey together. We got engaged on a treadmill at Barry's boot camp. And that kind of started our public facing persona as a fit couple, because we got engaged on the treadmills and my mom was there. It was a whole thing. It was on page 6 and people started following us on social media. And we had this little Instagram account that we had started together, NYC Fit Fam.
Okay. And
all of a sudden it had like 2,000 followers and then 4,000 followers. And then today I have 180,000 followers.
Yeah.
And I started as a fitness influencer, speaking about how I wanted to help people through not just the traditional, what people do on social media in the fitness space. Like I didn't want to take a pretty picture of an acai bowl and call it art. I wanted to really promote IRL community. And I started doing events. My husband and I would do these fitness events and nutrition events and mindfulness events. And we started getting people together and building an NYC Fit Fam community. That led to eventually my side hustle became my full hustle. I was making more doing that than I was at my corporate job. And I was like, love you, mean it, gotta go. And I quit my job. And then that was the springboard for my job. Now I'm on television. I'm, on TV just about every day, either on the national TV shows or also I live in Pennsylvania now because I'm on QVC. I'm the face of Zuda, which is kind of like their Lululemon or their Athleta. It's a great activewear brand. And then I also am a podcaster. I have a podcast called Off the Gram. I just signed a second podcast with Warner Brothers. I have a coaching program called The Big Ask, where I help people use accountability to reach their goals. And I'm a keynote speaker, and I speak about radical wellness across the country.
Amazing.
I got to chime in here, man, because I feel like there's so many. I mean, obviously, we know a lot of the same people, which is kind of how we came together on this podcast here. And it's interesting because a lot of us have this party background where, and that's how essentially Erica and I know each other from the University of Arizona, where we definitely like to have a good time. And in the fitness wellness space, I feel like there's, the Anns of the world who have been optimized and running a marathon on every continent. while we were sleeping all day and partying all night, just waiting for the next rave or whatever you want to call it as a DJ. That was very much my lifestyle. And it seems like a lot of the party people are really coming together now and replacing those late nights for early mornings through all the things that we know and love and do. Where do you see all of this going, right? I get asked this question all the time. I just finished speaking on a panel about this. I'm just curious to get your expertise and your perspective on where the industry as a whole is going, what's around the corner. Give me your thoughts.
There's so much creativity in the space. And look, it's really cool because when I was getting sober, it wasn't really like cool. I was just saving my life.
Right.
But now there's so much in the sober curious movement, and everyone's like replacing, not everyone, but a lot of people are replacing their cocktails for like functional beverage mocktails with like, an oxygen bar. And there's a lot of people looking towards biohacking, looking towards really just up leveling their bodies and realizing that there's more out there. I think it's because we also got to a breaking point. Like things couldn't get much worse with our mental health and self-image.
Yeah.
And people are just trying to turn a corner in any way that they can. I think that fitness and wellness in general is just going to continue to get more creative. There are a lot of things that are a flash in the pan, right? I've seen a lot of fitness trends come and go that were like borderline ridiculous, but you know what? Do you take a risk? Like if it's fun and it works for a little bit, there might be the next trend next week. But I think there's so much fun to be had. And I think that the people who are in it for the right reasons, like those of us who just really geek out on it, I'll try anything anyone wants to throw at me, I'll try. I think right now we're in like an era of like pushing yourself. Like I've seen you cold plunging, Jay. Like I think the
100%.
cold plunging is so badass. But when you really look at where this stuff comes from, it's going back to like Ayurvedic studies and all of these different studies of the body and how we can optimize. Look at Huberman Labs, look at what people listen to, right?
Yeah.
We just want to optimize and be better. And I think it's a very interesting moment in our collective consciousness. We're not maybe trying just to escape through chemicals anymore. We're trying to be present and tune in, which is really cool.
I loved the opportunity to do this podcast with Erica because of her background in addiction and recovery, obviously, in addition to overall wellness, because I've learned so much from the amazing guests. But like a lot of my peer groups, I didn't really know how much I was going from one hangover to the next. Like I knew it, but it just was a lifestyle, that was just so normal. And like you said, I didn't even know there were daily activities to do in the park. Like what park are you even talking about? Right. Like, so, and I have friends today that, on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night, they're at home by themselves drinking tequila. And I'm like, you don't understand that you're just trying to escape your reality, which is sad to me because I love you. And there's such a better way. Like, why are you so miserable? I'm not miserable. I love tequila. No, you're fucking miserable and you're just escaping your life. Like, it's sad.
But you can't push people to, as we know this.
I couldn't agree more. I think we build self-esteem by doing esteemable acts. So you have to put those acts in your way to be able to show up for your life and do them. One of the biggest things that I learned in recovery was like the idea of being of service. I was like, wait, what do you mean? My sponsor was like, no, like you gotta like, it doesn't matter really what you want. You have to go show up for someone else. I was like, but I'm the victim. She's like, stick around. You might find out you're not the victim. And I was like, oh, so like getting out of your own head and showing up for other people, we build self-esteem by doing esteemable acts. So that's thing number one. Now, that aside, right? If you're not feeling like, if you're not really feeling that gracious, how about just self-talk? Because I'll tell you something, I'm a wellness expert for a living, and I'm the first one to wake up in the morning riddled with self-centered fear. I'm the first one to drive to the gym at like I was this morning at 6:30 a.m. being like, I cannot do this. There's no way I can do this. My body can't do this. My mind can't do this. And do you know what I say when that narrative creeps up? Out loud, I turn down my music and out loud, I sit up tall in my car. I'm driving my little car and I'm like, you are a hustler. You are a baller. You can do this. You are strong. People love you. People want to do business with you. You can show up. You are in control of your life. You are in control of your steps. You are in control of your thoughts. over and over for 13 minutes. I talked to myself this morning on my way to the gym. That's called proactivity. And sometimes that's what it takes. But the alternative is sitting in my victimhood and getting there and maybe not getting out of the car and going into the gym.
And by the way, like going back to my comment on like, it's a harsh way to phrase it, but I'm just so mad at people I love that they haven't seen the light, so to speak. Because for me, I mean, there's been many rock bottoms, lots of things that started with the death of my mother 23 years ago, things of that nature. And wanting to numb that pain and just running from it by numbing myself and working all the time and so on and so forth. And when I finally like stopped running away from myself and sat, what you just said earlier, Jamie, really resonated with me. Like I sat with it and I just started to like really do the work on myself. And I had to learn so many things for the first time because I was not just numb. But it's such a better way. It's like, I wish I realized this so long ago on some level. Trust me, I had a great time and nobody got hurt in the making of this film. But you know what I mean? Like, it's like, I really wish that I was able to enjoy those moments with my kids rather than drinking through the best times with them because I was so stressed out and all that stuff. And I want that for other people, especially the ones I really love.
I know. But they have to have what I call the gift of desperation, or you just don't feel it in the same way. So the gift of desperation is really powerful. It's a wonderful thing that is extraordinarily painful, but it is what opens your eyes, and it's a spiritual awakening of sorts. And unfortunately, verbally, you can't give them that same gift.
Yeah. I've never heard it said that way, by the way. That was everything. I always said I wasn't a quitter. I mean, that was like, I was proud of that, like, I'm like, I was trying to reach like superhero places in my mind. And then all of a sudden you realize like, I think I'm playing the wrong game. Like, why am I so proud of all this? Like, and I think that's a big part of, especially for men, like, you get together and you're like, one of you's like, I drank 3 bottles of wine last night. And the next person's like, I drank 5, dude. I crushed you. Like, that's not something to be so proud of, but it's so normal, right? It's abnormal to tell somebody who's coming over and asking you for a drink, if what you want to drink, it's abnormal to say, I don't drink. It's right. It's like if you ordered 3 double tequilas, they'd look at you more normal than if you said, I'm actually just going to have a club soda. Just in general, though, it's kind of like in the social world when people are so used to you being that person, it's really you feel bad, like you're letting them down, and that kind of pressure keeps you in that loop maybe a little longer than you want. And finally, well, you're also, if you're weak too, which you are, because you're looking for an excuse, like, okay, I'll just have a couple tonight, like it's.
Yeah, well,
All
and
those
like
things.
weak is one word for it, but you're delicate in the beginning of sobriety. Like, you could be knocked over by a feather because you want any excuse to go back out. You're like, these people think I'm a chump. I'm gonna just have a drink. Look, in early recovery, and let's be clear, I mean, we're talking about 2 different things in the same silo here. So there's like deciding to abstain from drinking because you're like, I just want to live better, be better, right? And hence the name of your podcast. And then there's Erica and I are like, wow, damn near killed me. Like recovery from like a devastating illness, essentially, right? So if people really need to get sober, I do recommend taking a little bit of time away from the social scene to essentially recover. If you had cancer, you wouldn't be like, but I got to go to the bar. You'd be like, I know, I got to go do chemo. So like, you got to just get well. But eventually, Jay, like, I don't know about you, Erica, like 15 years, I imagine we're about the same length of sobriety. It never even occurs to me. And my husband works in EDM. We were at clubs all the time.
Yeah.
It never crosses my mind if somebody gives a shit whether or not I'm having a drink or not. It never even occurs to me because I'm so far removed from it, which is cool. And is it okay? Can we curse on this podcast? Is this
a million %.
Okay. No, like I always joke, like the greatest thing about it was like, I realized I'm just as bananas on a Diet Coke because I wasn't on 8-Ball Coke. So like, yay me, you know what I mean? And like, as it turns out, 20 years later, life is more fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, completely. And I've gotten to that place already where it doesn't cross my mind. I don't care. But it's been way more recent for me, and I understand how it could be challenging for people
Yep, for sure.
to even, just start the path. Because trust me, guys, like I've been in very many situations where I should have been like, I am done. I can no longer go near this shit. And, from, things that very could have easily have killed me to my wife definitely thinking about leaving me to, all of the main things, right? Where it's like, you're ruining your life. But I don't think so many people, and I'm speaking for myself, even though you hit these like really ugly places that are bottoms, you're like, fuck it, it's their problem. It's not
Yes.
me. Like, I'm not stopping fucking drinking. This is awesome, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, and can I
even when it's
also
not awesome, it's
say,
awesome
like,
in your head.
in your head, I think that if it were the low moments, if any of those were enough to keep you sober, I personally would have gotten sober a long time before. Any of
Right.
the ambulance rides, seeing any of the friends carted away to jail, thank God I didn't have kids at that point. But like I saw when I was in treatment, I mean, the
Yeah.
amount of mothers, right? Like, and if any of that was enough to keep me sober, I would have been sober years before I got sober. I'll tell you what keeps me sober every single day. I love the life that I have in sobriety so much. You could not pry it away from me with a crowbar. That's the difference. I
Yeah.
don't not drink because I'm scared of going out, because I'm not scared enough of what would
Right.
happen. I'm not scared enough. I should be, but there's a chip missing in my head. I'm not. I just love this part of my life so much that you're not going to pry it away from me. And that's kind of the difference. And so what you're trying to explain to your friends home drinking tequila, Jay, is something that they can't understand until they grasp it in the same way you've grasped it. So
Yeah.
just pray for them,
Yeah. It's interesting now because, being very involved in the wellness space from a scaling fitness concepts, including Barry's and all of the premium brands, the household names, being, really ahead of the curve and understanding what's out there and what's coming is where I pride myself. And that's my favorite work. And right now I'm doing a lot in the mindfulness space where, studio experiences in mindfulness, in contrast therapy, hot and cold. And there's a lot of microdosing and a lot of ketamine involved and a lot of, other things that are kind of getting brought into that space. And I'm like, the concept of dopamine, right? Which is what we were getting our fast, quick fixes, right? In the nightclubs, whatever we were doing to do that, right? Was to get that dopamine rush. And I've been able to achieve that dopamine rush through so many natural ways, which I'm super proud of. And now it's like transitioning back into this like immersive experience with substitutions of things like ketamine. What are your thoughts on that?
Wow. I mean, how long do we have? I'm not going to go deep down this rabbit hole because I have a lot of thoughts about that. And as a wellness podcaster, I'm interviewing a lot of people in this space about, psychedelics. And I was at the Omega Institute this summer and I was with a whole group of people doing a whole workshop on psychedelics. And I learned a lot from them. And they were not hippy dippy trippy people, right? They were like doctors and, psychopharmacologists and religious people, like from all these different places that were really doing studies in the space. I want to say that my first instinct was to have my historical knowledge from sobriety cloud my judgment on all of this and be like, it's all bad. It's all bad. It's dangerous. It's bad. I am now more open-minded, not for myself. It's not something I would ever do. I'm a sober woman and that is what I am. It's just not for me. But I do think there are use cases where it is helping people. And I've seen the evidence of that. I've interviewed so many practitioners who are doing really interesting work in this space. For me, I will not throw the baby out with the bathwater. I do still feel that for my sober community, we have to protect our sobriety first with everything that we have. And I also think it's becoming a little bit mainstream for my liking, like to get a DIY ketamine in a box kit to your doorstep. Like what the, like, oh yeah, like like, without a doctor, unguided. like, I don't know. I grew up in the rave scene in the 90s, dude. I had a DIY ketamine in a box too. Okay. Like, I get it. But it didn't turn out that great for me. So like, all I'm saying is like, I could see that taking a pretty bad left turn. So it does concern me. But again, I'm not like a full on expert in the space. But I will say, I do think that there is room to have an open mind, even as a sober woman, that it may be helpful for a lot of other people, just not myself. Yep. And even like opiate withdrawal, there's a lot of like promising work in the space around that. So look, I mean, if it's going to help somebody get better, be better, live better, then by all means. But do you know what else helps with veterans and PTSD? Puppies. So can I tell you guys, I just did a retreat down in Florida. It was called the Reset Retreat. I partnered with a man named Dr. Don Wood, incredible human being, works from a neuroscientific approach around trauma. And then I had two guest practitioners. One was Ann Malum, our joint buddy, and she was there with her boo, Brett Eaton. And they not only taught a fitness class, but Ann gave a very inspirational keynote speech. And then also Nikki Sharp, who is another great wellness expert and coach and transformational life coach. One of the experiential moments that we had on site was brought to us by one of our partners. It's a company named Paw Raid. They got me my dog. They connect people with puppies in like an ethical way, like so you don't use a puppy mill. It's an awesome company. But I was like, how can we integrate this brand into the fabric of this event? Dr. Don was like, do you know that dogs' brains resonate at 7.83 hertz, which is the Schumann resonance? I was like, what the hell is that? He said, it's the grounding resonance of the earth. And when people are grounded to the earth, it helps with their anxiety. It can help veterans with PTSD. He said, why don't we have like a litter of puppies that people can sit in between sessions of this trauma work and get grounded? And I will tell you guys, it literally brought people back to like, you're like childlike when you're with a puppy. And so it was an amazing, amazing opportunity to not use a friggin' psychedelic, but just use the power of puppies. Let me tell you.
The power of puppies. I love it. Yeah, the Apollo Neuro.
I don't know.
Oh, so Dr. David Rabin, he invented this, and this basically gives you the same sensation as like somebody holding your hand would, and completely changes like your HRV and so many different things in your body. It's pretty fascinating. Yeah.
I love that. Well, there's a lot of work around havening. And I'm one of the people on my executive board for the Big Ask is a man named Dr. Buzz Mingan. Dr. Buzz was Justin Bieber's health coach through his most traumatic time, which was a couple of years back. He was like, just had so much anxiety he could hardly function. I don't know if you remember that, but the kid goes through some tough times. So anyway, Dr. Buzz really walked him through that. And he is an expert in havening. And havening is just, rubbing your hands, and then there's like all of this movement to it, rubbing your hands over your face. But there's a lot of evidence to it that the touch and the repetitive motion can really bring you back to a place of grounding. I think it's fascinating. I have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old, 2 little boys.
Amazing. 2 boys. Welcome to the 2-boy club.
It is fun. I'm like, where did you get that? Like, he has these things that he'll say to me. The other day I was like, I told him to like apologize to his brother, and he was like, da-da-da-da. He's like, yeah, that's just not happening. And I was like, who are you? Like, he's just like a little cartoon character. I'm like, where do you even get this stuff? But it really is so fun to watch them blossom, and how they're so different. My 2 kids are so incredibly different from one another. And I'm like, how did those both come from us? It's wild.
It really is.
Absolutely. And it's amazing to set a good example, but then there's always the next thing to work on. And so right now look at me. I cleaned up my life, and then I got this great business, and now I work so hard. And then the other day I had this moment where I was with my son, and we were at an amusement park, and we're on these bumper cars, and we're flying around in the bumper cars and running into each other and having so much fun. And the thing ends, and he looks at me, and his face got a little bit sad. And I said, "What's up, dude?" And he was like, "Mom, I don't think I've ever seen you laugh that hard." And it broke my heart, because I was like, here I am doing all the things I thought I was supposed to do, right? I'm putting the beautiful roof over his head, sending him to all the right schools, doing everything, because all the cars and the things. All this kid wanted from me was to put my phone down and to belly laugh with him. So it's a constant work in progress, right? Like, we got to not work too hard. We got to show up. We got to be present. And putting down the drinks and the drugs, a very good start, But, every single day is an opportunity to be the best you. And so, we just got to always challenge ourselves. Like, how could we be better? Because it is true. Especially if you're a mom, these days go so fast with the little ones.
You guys, I mean, the fact that, your children will never have seen you out of control is amazing. I can't say the same. And my son, he had a friend over this weekend, and his friend randomly turns to me, and he's like, he turns to Jax, my 11-year-old, and he's like, "Can I tell him?" And he looks at me, and I'm like, "Yeah, what's up?" He's like, "Oh, Jax told me a story on the bus this one time that you got drunk, and it was like your birthday and like something." And I'm like, I'm like looking at them like kind of confused about where this story's coming from, and couldn't have been recently. And I'm like, yeah, that probably did happen. Like, don't know what to say, but it's really it's amazing because I turned to my kids one day, like, let's call it end of last year, and just simply said, you guys are never going to see me like have another drink. It's not happening type thing. And it shows you how much they just follow what they see. To your point, Erica, it's the same way we saw our parents doing things, or at least I did and you did. And you just kind of mirror that behavior because it feels like it's okay if they're doing it. The fact that my kids are still relatively young and they know how I feel about, the things, and that I'm just trying to be better today than I was yesterday, that means everything to me.
100%. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And I'm really lucky. My husband and I are on this journey together.
Yeah.
I'm 42. My husband's 62. So he got sober. I've seen him have one drink. We went on our first date, and we both put all our cards on the table. He's like, I've been married 3 times. I have like 3 grown kids. And I was like, I'm like a sober, crazy crack addict. Like, whatever. We're both at the end of the dinner. We're like, oh, we're both still here, I guess, and like, that was that. So then second date, whatever, we did something else. And then third date, we were out at a club, and he ordered one drink. And then after that date, he was like, he's like, the sobriety thing, it sounds pretty important to you. Like, I was just about to celebrate 4 years at the time. He was like, could I come to that meeting with you? Like, it sounds like, maybe I could just learn a little about what you were into. I was like, yeah, it's an open meeting. You can come. He came, totally identified with the speaker, and was like, oh shit, I belong here. Like, I earned a seat here. Like, I should be here. And he got sober, and that was 11 years ago. So
Wow.
our kids have never seen him have a drink, but he has 3 grown kids. And I know, a lot of remorse. He looks back and he's like, I wish it didn't take me until he's 62, until 50, 50 something to get sober. And I said, but you're sober now. Like,
Yeah.
you're here now. So who cares? Like, it is truly never too late.
Yeah, agreed. But, I do have like that feel. I mentioned it earlier, and I have that feeling of some of those best times I was numb, and I was not only numb, I was anxious and quick, short fused, and they didn't deserve that, So I hear you on the better late than never, and, so on and so forth. But I think it only really robbed me of those experiences at those phases of life where they're just cloudier than they would have been.
When I hear, I was just going to say, when I hear people like in recovery talking about their parents though, that got sober, and them seeing like that switch flip, do you know what a powerful example you're setting? Because they saw what it was like before, and they see what you're like now, Jay,
Yeah.
and they understand what it took to take that type of control over your life,
Yeah.
and how much better you are now. So if anything, you are giving them a gift of a very powerful demonstration of what it looks like to get well. I loved talking with you guys, and everybody listening. If you want to ever get in touch with me, I'm NYC Fit Fam on Instagram. DMs are always open. I love chatting with you all.
Amazing. Thank you so much.